Canada, a country of vast landscapes, quiet beauty, and silent resilience. Its forests carry ancient whispers, and its lakes reflect stories of survival. Yet, hidden beneath the snow and silence is a tale almost too painful to tell. A story of love, hope, and a tragedy. No one ever wanted to remember the story of the Gakhal family. In the late 1970s, the Canadian government began welcoming immigrants from South Asia, giving many families a chance to begin a new life. Among them was a man named Karnal Singh Gakhal. Although Karnal lived comfortably in India, working hard on his farm, he often felt regret that he had never received a proper education. That regret became his motivation. He wanted more for his children, especially his daughters. His dream was simple: move to Canada so they could have opportunities he never had, attend good schools, and one day go to university. When he received his immigration approval, only one plane ticket could be managed. Karnal decided to go first, find work, and save money before bringing his wife and children. He landed in British Columbia, where life was tough at first. He worked long hours in orchards, picking apples and fruit, and often went to bed alone, missing his family deeply. But his determination never wavered. Within 2 years, he secured a better job at a lumber mill, and by saving every penny, he managed to purchase a 3-story house. Soon after, his wife Darren Kaur and their daughters, Jasbir, Raja and Balwinder, joined him in Canada. Over the next years, their family grew bigger. 3 more children were born: Kulvinder, Harvinder, and the youngest, their only son, Jaspal. The Gakhal household became known for warmth, discipline, and a strong focus on education. Each child worked hard toward their studies. Jasbir became a social worker. Raja pursued dental hygiene. Balwinder studied pharmacy. Kulvinder focused on criminology. Harvinder dreamed of becoming a chemical engineer. And young Jaspal was still in school. The future looked bright. But what awaited them was a nightmare no one could have imagined. As the years passed, the Gakhal children grew into strong, ambitious young adults. Their parents, Karnal and Darren, felt a deep pride watching their children succeed. With the daughters stepping into professional careers, it was time for the parents to focus on another important chapter of their lives: finding life partners for them. The first wedding was for the eldest daughter. She was admired in the community for her compassion and her work as a social worker. She dedicated nearly a decade of her life to helping women who had suffered from domestic abuse. To her parents' relief, she married a man with a respectable job, Baljit Singh Chiron, also known as Roger. Roger was a correctional officer at Massacre prison, a man with steady employment and a promising future. Their marriage was celebrated with great joy, and Jasbir soon moved to Abbotsford, where she and Roger started a family of their own. Within a few years, they were blessed with 3 daughters, twins, Justine and Brittany, and later their youngest, Courtney. Their home was filled with love and laughter, and life seemed stable. But for the Gakhal family, happiness was soon tested with their second daughter's marriage. In 1994, Raja, at the age of 26, was married to Sukhwinder Vijay Chahal, better known as Mark. On the surface, Mark was an ideal groom, a 28-year-old chartered accountant from a well-respected Punjabi family. The wedding was grand, held at the Okanagan Sikh temple, with nearly 400 guests in attendance. Mark had even purchased an apartment in Burnaby, where he and Raja were to begin their married life. At first, everything appeared fine, but the truth revealed itself shockingly fast. On their wedding night, Mark drank heavily. An argument followed, and in a moment of uncontrolled anger, he slapped Raja across the face. That single act was only the beginning of the nightmare she would endure. As weeks turned into months, Mark's behavior grew more violent and unpredictable. He wasn't just controlling, he was abusive. He beat her, dragged her across the floor, and hurled chairs at her. She often bore visible bruises and scratches, each mark telling a silent story of her suffering. Mark also trapped her in fear with constant threats, warning that if she ever spoke of the abuse, he would kill her. Even her freedom was stripped away. Mark forbade her from speaking to neighbors, answering the phone, or even having friends. He isolated her completely, feeding his jealousy and need for control. You might ask, why didn't a well-educated and intelligent woman like Raja leave such a marriage? The answer lies in her values. She had been raised to protect her family's honor, to avoid shame, and to endure hardship for the sake of her loved ones. Divorce, in her mind, would not only stain her reputation, but also bring embarrassment to her parents. So she kept her pain buried. But even the strongest walls eventually crack. After enduring endless abuse, Raja finally reached her breaking point. One day, she gathered the courage to pack a small bag and left for her sister Jaspia's home. There, she found not just shelter, but also strength. Jaspia, who had spent her life helping abused women, now became her sister's guiding light. Together, they revealed the painful truth to their parents. Karnail and Darren were devastated to learn what their daughter had suffered. But instead of shame, they responded with unconditional love. They welcomed her home with open arms, assuring her that she was not alone. Encouraged by her family, Raja reported Mark's abuse to the RCMP. However, she hesitated to name him directly in the police report, fearing the consequences. The authorities respected her wishes, and her statement was filed without naming her abuser. Unfortunately, this caution gave Mark even more power. The Gakhal family, meanwhile, tried to focus on happier things, preparing for the next wedding. Their third daughter, Bolwinder, was soon to be married. Unlike before, Karnail and Darren were extra careful. They investigated every detail about the groom, spoke to officials, and asked around in the community. This time, everything checked out. Balwinder was engaged to an engineer from a respected family, and the wedding was planned with care. But as the family prepared for celebration, Mark's world was unraveling. He was consumed with anger, jealousy, and a thirst for revenge. He was losing control, and his obsession with Raja was about to push him down a very dark path. While the Gakhal family tried to move forward with life, Mark was spiraling into a dangerous obsession. Losing control over his wife had left him enraged, and instead of accepting the separation, he began plotting ways to regain power. His pride was wounded, and his anger soon turned into something much darker. Even before his marriage, Mark had applied for a firearm license. At that time, he didn't actually own a gun. But after his relationship collapsed, everything changed. He joined a rifle club, which gave him legal access to weapons. And from the United States, he purchased a semi-automatic pistol, the type of weapon that was strictly limited in Canada, usually reserved for police, security professionals, or certified club members. With this gun in hand, Mark began spending almost every day at the shooting range. Witnesses later recalled how he practiced relentlessly, firing over and over with a cold focus, as if preparing for something beyond sport. It wasn't a hobby, it was training. Meanwhile, Raja tried to rebuild her life, but Mark refused to let her live in peace. He made threatening phone calls, sometimes late at night, reminding her that he was watching. He promised that if she ever embarrassed him again, he would kill her. He also harassed her parents with angry calls, screaming that they had destroyed his life. Terrified, yet still hopeful for resolution, Raja returned to the RCMP and reported the threats. Once again, she hesitated to push for charges, asking police only to warn Mark instead of arresting him. Officers visited his home, confronted him about the threats, and issued a caution. But Mark denied everything. He claimed his estranged wife was lying, twisting the story to ruin his reputation. With no hard evidence, the case was dropped. The warning did nothing to calm him. In fact, it fueled his rage. To Mark, the police visit was humiliation, and humiliation demanded revenge. Soon after, he secretly purchased a second pistol. He was now armed with 2 deadly weapons. His practice sessions became even more frequent, and his anger more consuming. In his mind, Raja was not just his estranged wife, she was the reason for every failure, every wound to his ego. By early 1996, the divorce case was prepared for court. During a tense meeting with lawyers, Mark learned something that seemed to push him past the point of return. The Gakhal family was planning a wedding. Raja's younger sister, Balwinder, was set to be married in June. To most families, this was a moment of joy. But to Mark, it was a personal insult. While his marriage had ended in bitterness, the Gakhals were preparing to celebrate a new union with happiness. In his mind, their joy was a direct attack on his misery. Friends later said that Mark's bitterness grew unbearable during this time. He would rant about betrayal, about dishonor, about how he had been wronged. But behind his words was something far more dangerous, a plan forming in silence. The stage was set, and Mark was waiting for the moment to strike. The summer of 1996 was supposed to be a time of joy for the Gakhal family. Preparations were in full swing for Balwinder's wedding, and their home in Vernon, British Columbia, was filled with excitement, music, and tradition. On the evening before the festivities, the house was decorated with lights and flowers. Relatives and friends were beginning to arrive, and the family was busy preparing for the Mendi and Dolki celebrations. The sound of laughter echoed through the rooms. For a family that had worked so hard to build a life in Canada, this wedding was more than just a union. It was a symbol of hope, progress, and love. But someone else was preparing to. Someone who carried only anger, bitterness, and a deadly plan. That man was Mark Chahal. 2 days before the wedding, Mark left his home. He packed clothes, ammunition, and both of his pistols into a bag. Driving several hours to the Vancouver airport, he abandoned his car and rented a green van. From there, he made the journey to Vernon. He checked into the Globe Hotel, just a short drive from the Gakhal residence, and waited. The next morning, while the family was busy with last-minute preparations, Mark put his plan into motion. Around mid-morning, Karnail Singh Gakhal stepped outside to wash his car. The house was buzzing with activity inside, children playing, women preparing food, and the TV running cartoons for Jasbir's 3 little daughters. Karnail, proud and happy, had no idea that death was lurking just meters away. Without warning, the green van pulled up quietly near the home. Mark stepped out. In his hands were the 2 pistols he had been practicing with for months. Before Karnail could even react, shots rang out. Mark fired at him, and Karnail collapsed on the driveway, bleeding heavily. Mark then turned his rage toward the house. Bullets shattered the windows as he stormed inside. What followed was pure horror. In the living room, Jasbir sat with her 3 young daughters and her sister Raja. Their mother Darren was also nearby. Mark raised his gun and began firing without mercy. Screams filled the air, but his hands did not stop. Room by room, he hunted down family members. Jasbir was struck and collapsed on the sofa as her daughters clung to her, crying. One of the twins, Justine, was hit twice, but miraculously still breathing. Her sisters, Brittany and Courtney, survived by hiding near their mother's lifeless body. Their father, Roger, was shot multiple times, but, in his final moments, whispered to the police the name of the attacker, Mark Chahal. Elsewhere in the home, more tragedy unfolded. Darren was shot in the back as she tried to escape. Jasbir's mother-in-law, Gurmail, was killed instantly after being struck in the face. Balwinder, Kolvinder, Harvinder, and young Jaspal, each of them full of promise and dreams, were all gunned down in their own rooms. Within minutes, Mark had destroyed nearly the entire Gakhal family. A home that had once been filled with laughter and love was now drenched in silence and blood. After the massacre, Mark calmly walked back to the green van, as if nothing had happened. Neighbors, frozen in shock, dialed 911. When police arrived, the sight that greeted them was unimaginable. Broken glass, lifeless bodies, and 3 terrified little girls huddled beside their mother. It took only 4 minutes for Mark to erase decades of love, sacrifice, and hard work. After the gunfire ended, silence fell over the Gakhal home. Police rushed inside to find a scene that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Outside, Karnail's body lay by the driveway, a proud father who had once dreamed of giving his children a better future. Near the doorway, Darren was found lifeless, shot as she tried to protect her family. Inside the living room, the television still played cartoons, an eerie contrast to the horror surrounding it. Jasbir lay motionless on the sofa, her daughters clinging desperately to her. Justine, badly injured, still clung to life, while her sisters, Brittany and Courtney, trembled in fear but remained unharmed. Nearby, Roger, Jasbir's husband, lay dying on the floor. Despite his wounds, he used his final breath to name his killer, Mark Chahal. Elsewhere in the house, the bodies of Balwinder, Kolvinder, Harvinder, and young Jaspal were discovered. Each one had been full of ambition, full of dreams, and full of life only moments before. Jasbir's mother-in-law, Gurmail, was also among the dead. In less than 5 minutes, Mark had wiped out almost an entire family. After the attack, Mark returned calmly to his hotel room. There, he wrote a short note to his own relatives, apologizing for what he had done. Then, he turned one of his pistols on himself. Hotel staff later heard the sound of a single gunshot and discovered his body. In the days that followed, grief spread through the Sikh community and beyond. The Gakhal family had been well known, respected, and admired. Their loss was not just a private tragedy, it was a wound that the entire town of Vernon felt. The funeral was attended by hundreds. The coffins of the victims were laid side by side, and the temple that had been preparing for a wedding was instead filled with mourning. Tears replaced laughter, hymns replaced wedding songs, and the community gathered in shock, trying to make sense of the senseless. In the end, only 4 people survived: Jasbir's 3 little daughters and their grandmother. The children had lost not only their parents, but nearly their entire family in one day. The story of the Gakhal family stands as a reminder of how dangerous unchecked anger, control, and abuse can become. It is also a warning of the consequences of ignoring red flags, threats. Violence and obsession should never be taken lightly. No family should ever suffer such pain. No community should ever have to bury so many loved ones at once. This tragedy, hidden in Canada's history, is not just a story of death, but also of resilience. A reminder that even in the face of such darkness, the survivors carried forward the love, dreams, and memories of the family that was taken from them.